thank you for coming to this workshop on hope for people with hoarding disorder. And my name is Mike Golub. I am a trainer at CUCS, and I've been researching and doing trainings on this topic since 2007. So we do a day-long training on working with people with hoarding disorder, and obviously that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to introduce everybody in just a minute as they come up and speak, but I just want to say a few words, and then I'll say some more things just to frame the issue on working with people with hoarding disorder. Obviously, already at this conference, I've heard several different case studies involving people with hoarding issues. So we know that this is an issue for a lot of our tenants that live in supportive housing. I also just want to thank the network for letting us come back every year to discuss this and keeping this issue on the table of working with people with hoarding disorders. It is a big issue, and it's got a lot of things connected to it, as we'll see, bed bugs, mental health, and obviously fire safety hazards and things like that. But a couple of things are happening out in the community that I want you to know about before we get into the topic, and that is right now the Education Alliance is forming a hoarding task force, in New York City hoarding task force. There was one 10 years ago that Randy Frost was involved with, who is the big researcher on the topic, but we've started it up again. I have some information here about the task force, or you can come and see me afterwards if you're interested in participating. We want to get as many people involved as possible. There actually right now is a survey going around the city, and I have a bunch of surveys right here in the front. If you're interested in participating, please feel free to take it, send it back into the Education Alliance, or you can send it over to me. But we're trying to get some numbers, some data, which we know a little bit, but we need a lot more information about the costs, fire problems, and what's going on, obviously, behind closed doors. So just so you know, the survey is here, and we're going to leave some room for question and answers. The last couple of years, we've done this workshop. We haven't been able to take a lot of question and answers, so we're going to try to do that today. Anyhow, moving on, we know, you get to see we have a great panel here. I'll introduce everybody as they come up. So just to begin with, we know that between 2 and 5% of the United States population has this issue of too much clutter and hoarding problems. It's probably even greater numbers, maybe 10 million that have more clutter issues, may not have just especially a hoarding disorder. But as you all know and deal with every day, it is a difficult behavior to stop, much like people that have substance use problems. It's just not going to stop in one day. It's a very slow process working with the population. And of course, the good news here today is, I think for many of us have believed for many years that there's just no help out there, and there's just no way you can change people, and they're going to live this way for the rest of their life. But that is not true, as we'll hear today. There is a new evidence-based practice called Buried in Treasures, and that's what today is all about. And it's 15 classes long. We'll get into that in a minute. Obviously, the behavior change is slow with the population. We know bed bugs like clutter, but obviously bed bugs I've heard people already mentioning that today. Bed bugs can't be blamed on people with HD, but of course they do like clutter, so, and it of course is costly and annoying, and nobody wants them. And it's obviously a big issue people are dealing with a lot. We do some trainings at CUCS on working with people with bed bugs. Obviously, as I just said, it's once thought to be hopeless. There are now many reasons to be hopeful, and one of them is this Buried in Treasures evidence-based practice. Just so you know, we have to be clear about what hoarding disorder actually is. Now it's in the new DSM-5. It is a persistent difficulty discarding and parting with your possessions, regardless of their value. It's difficult discarding due to perceived needs to save them. We'll talk about that in a second. Obviously, it's really about active living areas that are usually can't be used for what they were designed. The kitchen can't be used to cook on, a shower can't be used to take a shower, your bed can't be slept on, everything kind of becomes a surrogate closet, and that's kind of really what hoarding disorder is really all about. Obviously, it usually is accompanied by significant clinical distress, usually anxiety disorder, depression, ADD, ADHD that usually accompanies it. And it's usually ruled out other kinds of issues like traumatic brain injuries or Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a very rare kind of disease. And this is kind of interesting that sometimes, at least anecdotally in my trainings, a lot of people with hoarding disorder do also seem to have schizophrenia, although right now in the current definition, oftentimes that will be ruled out if people are hoarding or collecting things due to some delusional content. And we'll get to that in a second as well. Obviously, it's excessive acquisition, and then, of course, the failure to get rid of things that is really the hallmark of the disorder. Insight is pretty wide-ranging. You know, some people have very good insight, but just can't stop doing it. Although insight, the majority of people is really, you know, on the fair to poor side. Demographics, just like class, ranges widely. Usually, hoarding does tend to start around age 13 and becomes more problematic as people get older. A lot of elderly people are very prone to the disorder. Marital status tend to be single and high divorce rate, although Lee, we'll talk a little bit about that maybe. People do tend to live alone. It is now understood that hoarding disorder is a genetic issue. So that may lead to newer medications. Currently, there aren't too many medications that will work with the population, but there's probably a lot of stuff that's going to be coming on the horizon. Obviously, recent findings show that, you know, what we're going to be talking about today, Buried in Treasure, is a great way to help people come to the insight and to help them start to declutter. We know that motivational interviewing and cognitive behavioral therapy, that's where a lot of the answers and the solutions are right there. So, you know, people should be receiving training on motivational interviewing. But we should also know that we all collect things for the same reason that many people with the disorder collect things, and that is we collect things for these three fundamental reasons. One, things have sentimental value. You want to keep them, like your kids' little booties, or you know, some pair of clothes, or an heirloom, or a picture of your grandparents. Or they're the items that have utility, right? I don't know about you, but I have, you know, several ways to deal with garlic, even though I just use a knife. But you know, I have the way to roll it and the garlic press and this and that, because you never know when it might come in handy, right? Some people keep some clothes around just in case they might be able to fit back in them, right? And then eventually you realize, you know what, I'm not going to fit into these. I need to get rid of them. But you don't throw them away just because you never know. And then thirdly, people just collect things because they're pretty and they like the way they look. And so we all collect things for these three reasons. This I like to show off is one of several book collections in my house. And so this, I wouldn't, you know, this is kind of why I do the training. I don't think I have the disorder, but I do have similar features. I do like to collect things, especially books. And yes, I've read 99% of them. I have about 3,000 books in my house. Anyhow, it's mostly history and philosophy and stuff. Anyhow, I just like to see it, you know. It really is unrelated to the whole thing here today. But obviously, this, I think, is a statement from someone struggling with hoarding disorder that I think gets to the heart of the matter. I feel that if I finally get rid of the piles that fill my room in my house and garage, I will die. I know it's not true, but I feel that way. It's my safety pile and significant other. If I throw too much away, there'll be nothing left of me. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, and I think that's kind of what's fascinating about the disorder itself, is that many of us have too much stuff. You know, we just have too much stuff. It reminds me of this George Carlin joke about other people's stuff. Anyhow, you can Google it later. One thing that we know is true is that, you know, one of the go-to things to deal with the disorder is doing deep cleanings. And though sometimes you need to, we want to hopefully try to move away from doing deep cleanings, especially against people's will. You know, this is Randy Frost from Stuff. He said, communicating during a deep cleaning is critical. So if you have to do a deep cleaning, you know, you want to label everything and don't throw things away. Somebody just mentioned, in the first workshop that they decluttered someone's apartment at the Times Square Hotel and found $1,500. So, you know, that could be thrown away, or you could throw away rings and valuables, and you don't want to do that because that will break the trust between you and your tenants, and of course then you are starting from negative 100. Obviously, anticipate people changing their minds at the last minute, be flexible and roll with the punches, but of course the most important thing is to try and avoid these deep cleanings whenever possible because of this, and that is many people after deep cleanings become suicidal, and we're not in the business of making people suicidal. So it's best to avoid any kind of deep cleaning or forced clean outs, although we do know that sometimes to pass inspections and keep people with, you know, Section 8 apartments so that they don't go to fair market rate, that sometimes we have to do these things or they're, you know, going to start a fire and hurt themselves, any number of things. But this is Randy again. A number of people have asked me about the effects of just going into someone's home and cleaning it out without their knowledge. While this may solve a short-term problem, it will not get rid of the hoarding behavior. Before a change in behavior can occur, the person must learn to make discarding decisions for themselves. I would not advise such a strategy unless the person's health or safety was imminently threatened, and that's a very difficult clinical decision to make. So it should be made in a group by a bunch of people that know the person. And of course, today is really about trying to avoid just doing these deep cleanings altogether and do something different, which right now, if I asked you, where do you send people that have hoarding disorder in the community? Where do you send them? Please tell me. Okay, people use APS, you know, Adult Protective Services, but they do deep cleanings only when the person actually allows them. Other resources that people have out in the community where they send people with HD? Exactly. That's my point. There aren't very many places, and so that means it's incumbent on us to make these places happen. And of course, we have the perfect thing right now that we can start very soon with just a couple of days of training, and it's very low cost, and that's what we're going to talk about, buried in treasures. So let me, on that note, introduce Lee Shuer, who is the founder of Mutual Support Consulting and the director of Mutual Support Services at ServiceNet, a mental health and human service agency in Massachusetts. He is an advanced level RAP facilitator and a certified peer specialist. He uses his personal recovery story to mentor others working through decluttering. He's the author of RAP for Reducing Clutter, the Mutual Support Workbook, and partnered with Dr. Randy Frost, who's been here a couple of times talking about hoarding disorder, to create the Facilitators Guide for running the Buried in Treasures workshop. In 2013, he was awarded the Outstanding Advocate Award for Mental Health Association of San Francisco for raising awareness about peer support and developing self-help groups for people with clutter challenges. He lives in Massachusetts, and he's a musician just like myself. Please welcome Lee Shuer.
Thank you, Mike. Can you all hear me in the back? Yes? Okay. Wonderful. So what I'm going to be talking about today is really my personal and my professional passion for developing peer support interventions for people with problematic clutter. That's something that's been a problem in my life, and many of my peers have also suffered. But there is hope, and what we're going to talk about today is one of those tools that could be very helpful. So let me tell you a little about myself. In the 80s, I was your typical collector. I have my baseball cards. See my Don Mattingly collection there, go Yankees. Tough growing up outside of Boston as a Yankees fan. I've got my Batman collection. I got my coins and the Darth Vader and Yoda and Rubik's Cube and A-Team. Typical things, right? A lot of you might have even had those things. And it was normal, very, very normal to collect those things. But it wasn't just about collecting. It was about taking care of them. Because at the time, the true value came in the form of quality. So what shape are they in? So you had to take care of them. I was good at that at the time. 1993, I'm getting ready to head off to college, and I had the foresight to put aside a time capsule for myself. So what you see over here is literally a time capsule dated 5/29/93, comic books, keep it dry. I actually just opened this a couple years ago and looked inside, and what it was sort of my version of Prozac in high school. It was Calvin and Hobbes, it was Far Side comic books, it was the things that kept me going, and I thought maybe at age 18, down the line, I might still need these things, so I put them away. Here we are in 2000. I'll fast forward to now I'm through college. I'm settling down in my first apartment. And what do you see over here in the back of my pickup truck? Can you see what that is? You think it's a hairdryer chair. It's not. It's a rocking chair. So basically, I took all the guts out. I put in stereo speakers. You put the dome down. Totally interactive surround sound experience. That is following through with a good intention. The rest is not. On the right, you've got an image of a collectibles booth I had in an antique shop, and this is all the stuff I was buying because I would sell it and make some money, but I realized month after month I was actually losing money because I was charging so much for the stuff that nobody would buy it. So there's some pretty, psychology 101 stuff going on. Obviously, I wasn't ready to let it go, but I was trying to show that I was trying, right? I was trying. 2004, I'm married. 2005, this is what our home looked like. So you can see in the top left, this is actually a king-size bed that my uncle lofted for us, creating quite a bit of cubic footage for us to stash things away. On the right, you've got images of our dining room. There is a table under here. And over here, this is my cat, Honeybee, trying to make it through the Great Wall of Stuff. Very frustrated. Now, my wife didn't know that I had a clutter problem, and you might ask, how did she not know? Well, when she met me, I was living with a couple of roommates, kind of a rock boy house, dirty dishes, kind of messy, normal, right? And she didn't realize, though, as we got ready to move into our one-bedroom studio apartment, that all that stuff was coming with us. Literally, all that stuff was mine. So that hair dryer chair and 3 others like it, all the stuff you saw in that booth, all the stuff you see on the screen now, was coming with us. And I came home from work one day. Remember, we've been married a year now. I come home from work, and she says, you got to make a decision. You got to make a decision. There isn't enough room for both of us to have our lives in this space. I need you to choose between me and this stuff, or I'm going to have to leave. So what should have been a very easy decision wasn't. And you could think, how? How in the world could it be more important to keep your Batman collection than your wife, right? Well, it was very important to me to keep my wife. But what if the relationship didn't work out and I let all the stuff go? A lot of things were going through my mind, including the reasons why I kept those things in the first place. They were a part of me. But she was an even greater part of me. So when she said it's me or the stuff, or I got to say goodbye, I made that choice. And I let the stuff go.
Oh, I was about to.
It's really funny to me, the things that people clap for now. I never knew. I never knew it would come to this. So the first experience I had with actually getting some help for this was a study on attachment and challenging beliefs about attachment. And the study was being done by Dr. David Tolan, who's one of the co-authors of Buried in Treasures. And so a couple of students from Smith College came and they interviewed me. They interviewed me about my extensive mental health past, the struggles I had gone through, my own recovery, and how this may have affected my collecting and keeping. And they said, what we want you to do is choose one item, just one item that's very important to you, tell us why, and try letting it go. So what I did was I chose an article of clothing. Something very important to me was the first shirt that I wore when I played a live gig with a band. So I was out there, I did Jimi Hendrix-style Star Spangled Banner to open for my buddy's band. And I thought someday I should hold on to that because maybe it'll be hanging in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something. And all these ideas about that article that made it important to save it just in case, right? So it wasn't about it being the right size or anything like that. I didn't even intend to wear it again. But what if somebody else would like it? So what they said was, we want you to let that go, okay? And keep track of how you feel every 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then half an hour, couple hours. What we're going to do is come back in a week and see how it actually went for you. They said, Lee, how do you feel right now? Scale of 1 to 10. 10 being worse than death about letting this go. And I said, easily an 11. I went all Spinal Tap on it. I said, it's easily an 11. They said, how sure are you that you're still going to feel that distress when we come back in a week? And I said, I'm very, very confident that I will, but I'm willing to try because I love my wife more than I love the stuff. So that's why I'm going to try. So they went away, and I kept track. And at first, I was very upset. It was very upsetting, and I did feel that way. But I noticed after a couple of days, my 10 became an 8. My 8 became a 7. My 7 became a 5. And maybe 4 days later, I was actually feeling at about a 2 out of 10. And to me, that equaled hope. Hope that not only could I let something go, but maybe that's where the new exhilaration would come from. It's no longer about keeping it. It's about letting it go. Seeing my life change in a better way today, not maybe tomorrow. So with a couple of years of recovery under my belt, and as a mental health counselor for 7 years at that point, I'm asked to join the local hoarding task force. Dr. Randy Frost, who Mike had mentioned earlier, is one of the members of the task force there. And I joined as a mental health counselor, not as a person with a clutter issue, but as a mental health counselor representing my agency. Well, I sat there not really feeling like I had a whole lot to share. I wasn't an expert on housing. I wasn't an expert on code enforcement. I wasn't an expert on elder services or child protective services. This wasn't really what I knew about. What I knew about, I wasn't sharing. But after about a year, I decided that maybe I should share. Maybe what I know is more of a benefit to the group than a liability to myself, and I have to make that leap of faith. I trust these people. They seem cool. The question is, will they still feel okay about talking openly in front of me? Because I'm one of those people that they're trying to help, right? Well, I'm really glad that I shared, because in 2009, we actually applied for a grant through Smith College in collaboration with my mental health agency. And it was going to be the first clinical study on the Buried in Treasures workshop. Okay? What they wanted to see is, can a group led by a non-clinician be effective at all? Can it help people? And I said, you know what? I want to run all those groups. I want to run every single one of them. This means a lot to me, and I want to help my fellow finder keepers. Let's see if we can do this. Well, the results were really good, really good. And we're going to talk more about that as we go on. But you might be wondering, what is the Buried in Treasures workshop? I can't just assume that you've all heard of it, even though I have, right? So what do we do in the Buried in Treasures workshop? We meet others who want to reduce their acquiring and saving. We learn and share skills that make this goal possible in a judgment-free space. We challenge our beliefs about attachments to things. We challenge our beliefs about the need to acquire new things. We find motivation for change, and we keep our eyes on the prize. So what do we work on each week? As Mike said, it's 15 sessions, 15 two-hour sessions over the course of 20 weeks. So what are we doing? So in week 1, and this is sort of my icebreaker image, we're just getting to know each other. It's a very isolative issue. A lot of people don't talk about it. They don't even necessarily go out all that much because of the shame and the embarrassment, the guilt, and the feeling like if they get caught, there are going to be dire consequences. For a lot of people who saw an ad in the paper that said, do you have too much stuff? There's help for you. This might be the first time they realized they weren't alone and that they had peers. Other people knew what it was like. So in the beginning, what we're really doing is starting to develop those relationships with people. We've become very good at creating relationships with our stuff, but not with people. So this is where we start. In week 2, do I have a problem, right? Do I have a problem? Now, this is difficult for people to be okay with exploring, because you're probably thinking, I know someone or I am someone who has too much clutter, but is it really a clinical diagnosis? Is it a mental health disorder? Well, it doesn't really matter to me. If you call this hoarding disorder, if you call it clutter, you call yourself a clutter bug. Some people call themselves messy, collector. Call yourself what you will. If you're ready to start reducing the amount of stuff in your home because it's a problem, Buried in Treasures Workshop is the place to be. And we ask people very specific, objective questions about their lives, about their state of mind, and about the state of their home to help them judge for themselves if this is something that they should be working on. and I've never had anybody walk away saying it wasn't for them. By the time they got there, they knew they were ready, and this sort of clinched it for them. Session 3, meet the bad guys. So what we do is we start by talking about the things that make it difficult to have success in our lives with decluttering. Is it about sentimental attachment, a worry about, wasting something, environmental issues? Is it, if I let this photo go, will I forget about that event? There are so many reasons why it's hard to let things go. If we don't talk about what's helpful, we won't have success. So then we talk about the good guys. And you'll notice we're already a month into this workshop. We're chipping away. We're starting to understand it from the inside out. This is the tortoise and the hare. I know who wins this race, but this is how we go. People are excited to start, and we're saying, slow your roll. We've got to talk about these really individual pieces of the puzzle. You can't just assume that it's impossible and that you'll never know how to do it. We'll give you the tools. So what we start to talk about are actually layperson's versions of cognitive behavioral therapy. So very much about behavior change. And what we're doing is, again, challenging those beliefs about our attachments and ourselves and the world, actually. Can we live with it differently than we have? How did this happen? Session 5. Now, what I want to do is break down the problem for you. This was very difficult for me. I'm a very abstract visual thinker. This is a very concrete sort of fill-in-the-box sort of an exercise. And I actually needed a lot of help to understand it before I could teach other people. But what we're going to do is break the problem down into manageable steps. I'll use my Pac-Man collection to demonstrate. So first we talk about emotional attachment and unhelpful beliefs about possessions. So what the authors have done is they've broken them down into these core beliefs. So beliefs about usefulness, waste, and responsibility, overly creative thinking, perfectionism, sentimental attachment, identity beliefs, safety, security, and control. For me, it was very much about identity. Growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends. I was very socially awkward. And so when I moved into this apartment with a couple of guys who were very social, their friends are coming over, I'm feeling awkward in my own skin. I don't know how to connect. But one day, one of them is walking by what I called the museum room, where I had my things displayed. They said, whose Atari is that? And I was like, that's mine. He said, can I play Pac-Man? And so the ball began to roll. I realized that I had a social hook here. I had something I could connect with. I didn't feel so good about myself, but I felt great about my stuff. So what was a solution for me was to keep collecting, get more. It's identity. So then there's the problems processing information, attention and focus, categorization, decision-making, and memory. For me, it's about attention and focus. I was diagnosed with ADD. It's one of the challenges that Mike talked about earlier. Made it very difficult for me to be effective and efficient when I was actually trying to apply myself to the sorting and discarding process. I was all over the place, right? I mean, every single game comes with a little instruction book. It's got sort of the mythology of every game and the ghosts and everything. And I would find myself absorbed in that. The ding goes off, half an hour's gone by, and I've done nothing. I realized I needed to change that. Reinforcement. What kind of behaviors are being reinforced by these feelings? Is it about feeling good to acquire an item? Or for me, is it about feeling bad to discard the item? For me, it was definitely a concern about discarding the item. I didn't want to feel bad, therefore I held on to it. My distress tolerance was less than 0. I didn't think I could handle it, so I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. So because I felt I needed these things, I avoided letting them go. What behavior patterns is this leading to? So acquiring more or discarding less? Now, at the time when I did this exercise, I was already 5 years into my recovery, but I was only starting to think about this for the first time. What I had begun to do was reduce what was coming into the house. What was really hard for me was letting it go. So at this point, I realized discarding less is the hardest part for me. So now I've got this model. Rather than thinking about it as just this big blob of stuff, and I have no idea where to start or what to do to make it better, I realize I need to think about my identity. In fact, my identity is no longer tied up in those toys. I hadn't really considered it yet, so maybe it won't be as painful as I thought to let them go. It's not so much who I am anymore. I don't have the problems processing because I've come up with good tools. The reinforcement is disappearing because I am able to let things go. The behavior patterns shift. It becomes easier to discard, and the clutter is reduced. So I've realized that there are some really concrete steps that I can take to start to get a handle on things. One of the things that made it very helpful for me was to stop thinking of it as all or nothing. I don't want you to think of this only about letting things go. To me, this is about keeping what's most important, figuring out how much space you have and using that space so that you are present in your things. You have what you want most. You may not have all of it, but there's moderation, something that a lot of us never learned. So that's just one exercise from one evening of this class. Session 6, enhancing motivation. So a month and a half into this group, the sort of honeymoon period is over. Maybe the roller coaster is starting to go down. People are starting to worry. This is taking longer than I thought. It's harder than I thought. So we spend an actual whole session just talking about our motivation. Why do you want to do this? Why is it important? What do you have to lose? What do you have to gain? Sessions 7 and 8 help with reducing acquiring. So like I had said, my first step in recovery was reducing what had come in. Now, some people have said that, well, just avoid places where you can get stuff. Well, you can get stuff everywhere. It's impossible to avoid it. Case in point, I'm on my way to facilitate one of these groups, and I had to stop at a pharmacy to pick up hand soap for the group, right? We were out. Now, it's holiday time. There's tons of gifts on the shelves, and I'm just kind of going through like this because I'm not feeling all that confident, so I'm avoiding it, right? Well, I get up to the counter, I've got the soap, I look over, and there are Pez dispensers, a nice display of Pez dispenser. I love Pez dispensers. And not only that, they're Nintendo themed, okay? Doubly awesome. And not only that, there's a black one and a white one and a pink one. 3, okay? So I'm standing there, I'm on my way to run this group for people that are trying not to do this, and I start racing through my thoughts. Do I need it? Do I want it? Is it large? Can I afford it? The last one that goes through my mind, what will my wife Becca think if I bring it home? That one's really helpful to me. It's good to have a really helpful question in your back pocket for moments like that. So I'm staring. I'm totally oblivious to everything going around. Sir, it's your turn. I'm like, okay. So I burst out of this daydream. I go up. I pay for the soap. I go to the group. I tell them the story. We have a good laugh, and life goes on. So I think that's wonderful. I lived without the stuff. About a year later, I'm actually doing some sorting in my home, and I come across a plastic bag from the Nintendo World Store. And I open it up, and what's inside? Those same Pez dispensers. Just to give you a sense of how mindless that acquiring was, and how unaware I was of what I was doing, whereas it felt like the most important thing in the world, I obviously forgot by the time it crossed my threshold. So it was good reinforcement for that. Just saying. So sessions 9, 10, and 11, we actually spend a few weeks talking about sorting and discarding. The reason we've waited to do that after acquiring is because of the emotional impact of letting things go. The thing on the shelf, you haven't lived with it yet. You maybe haven't loved it yet. You may be in love with it, but you don't love it. Well, the things you have in your home, you love them for all these different reasons. So we don't want to push it. We don't want to go too fast. We don't want to go too slow. But we want to go through this in a mindful way so that people have a chance for the new information to be absorbed and processed so that they can get a handle on it. Sessions 12 and 13, we take another look at the bad guys, what's still coming up. 14 is maintaining success. So now that the areas are getting cleared, what are you going to do? What's your schedule to stay on top of it? Session 15, reuniting for success. You've just been through a 20-week course in Buried in Treasures in under 10 minutes. And you can see, I mean, I'll take a breath. It's a lot of stuff, a real lot of stuff. But when you do it alone, it's very difficult. But when you do it in a group, it's much more effective. That's what this chart from 2012 shows. This is one of the first charts that we were able to develop, and it was published in the Behavior Research and Therapy Journal from England in 2012. And so these are the early results from that first round of Buried in Treasures workshops. What we've got over here is always been considered sort of the gold standard for clinical interventions for hoarding disorder, and that's the group cognitive behavioral therapy. We're seeing a 30% overall improvement in overall symptoms, so the difficulty discarding, the sense of well-being. People are feeling 30% better. Over here, buried in treasures, right out of the gate, 24%. Okay? Pretty good. Pretty good. We're liking what we're seeing. Now, the best way to study something and to know if it's really effective, and it wasn't just luck, is to look at what happened in that same time period for people who signed up for the class but actually randomly were chosen to wait until the first one was done. So what you see over here is about the clutter. This red line here shows that it didn't get better or worse while people were waiting, whereas the blue line represents that overall 24% improvement for people that went through the class. Over here, while people were waiting for the class, their clutter actually got worse, while the people in the class did significantly better. Now you're looking at the percentage of treatment responders that were really helped by this. Now, self-report on the left and the assessor on the right. So of self-report, almost 90% of people said that they actually felt better from this group. People waiting at the same time had about 18% excitement while they waited. The assessor looked at that. They said, well, you said 88. We're seeing an overall about 61%. This is good. Meanwhile, the people that think they're doing better while they wait, even less effective. So we're seeing this drastic shift for people that took the group. This is improvement. This is real improvement. What we have here is a slide from a study that's going on right now in San Francisco at the University of California at San Francisco. What they're doing is they're comparing this peer-led group to clinical-led groups. On the left, you've got the 24% improvement that we were able to achieve. On the right, and I'm really proud of this, they did even better. In those couple of years, we continued to develop the curriculum. It got better, the results got better. One of the things I found really personally nourishing about this work is the collaboration between peers and clinicians. It's not a competition, because we're all in it together. We all want the same outcome. We all want to see less stuff affecting people's lives negatively. So we're all in it together. I'm psyched to see people use my tool and do even better with it than I did. That's great. So the Facilitator's Guide for Leading the Buried in Treasures workshop that I developed with Randy Frost is available at the ocfoundation.org. ocfoundation.org. It's free. It's extremely detailed, right down to the number of pens and the number of minutes you're spending on the number of subjects. The facilitators over here can attest to that. It's really specific. So even if you've never run a group, it'll help you run that group. If you want to be even better at it, talk to someone who's been there and done it. Now, I was down in Australia in the fall last year doing some trainings on buried in treasures in Sydney and Brisbane. While we were down there, we were contacted by a local television station. We've heard about your recovery. We want to do a piece on it. I said, what's the slant on it? They said, oh, very positive, very hopeful. I think you'll like it. I said, all right. So we said, let's do it. So I'm going to show you a clip from that report.
Well, they're messy, sentimental, and they think that all trash is treasure. But the mounds of rubbish and junk collected by addictive hoarders is costing the nation $1.8 billion a year. Here's Hannah Maguire.
To the average eye, it's a stinking pile of junk. But to a hoarder, it's a lifetime of memories they never want to let go.
Art and art supplies and instruments and bobbleheads and action figures.
Lee Shuer calls himself a recovering finder-keeper. He was diagnosed with hoarding disorder 9 years ago. His house was cluttered with boxes and boxes of stuff.
And it flowed down the hall and then into the closets, into the kitchen, into the cupboards, up on top of the cupboards, into the basement, into the attic, into the yard, onto the porch, into my car.
Lee's wife Becca only found out about his large collection after they were married and moved into a tiny studio apartment.
If I wanted to get into a cabinet to get something, I would be climbing
over piles and mounds of items. Becca was forced to give Lee an ultimatum.
I knew I had a problem when my wife said, you have to choose between me and the stuff.
The wake-up call he needed to seek help. But Lee isn't alone. There's more than 600,000 more Australians who also suffer hoarding disease, and plenty more places that look like this. It's a disease that costs Australia $1.8 billion each year in cleaning, but it's also costing lives. 1 in 3 fire deaths this year were caused by hoarding. It's a mental illness that needs urgent treatment.
Motivate the person to seek help and recognize that they have a problem, because there are quite a few sufferers who will not recognize that they have a problem.
Hannah Maguire, 10 Eyewitness News.
It's a beautiful.
So it was like, thanks for that. That didn't feel that great. I mean, it was sort of like a, I don't know, junk sandwich there, where we had this like nice layer of hope, and our marriage made it. But what they did was they kind of pancaked it between these images, very dramatic, very exploitive, saying all trash is treasure. You know, this is what all of those people look like, and we must be an anomaly. Well, we're not. A lot of people have been able to make it through. And so even though a lot of people have been divorced, a lot more people are not getting divorced because they are working through this. It's always a risk when you allow the media to tell your story for you. By the way, the transition to the weather after that, he said, well, it's a beautiful day for hoarding or anything else you're going to do. And I was so bummed I didn't get that part, but there you go. Beautiful day. All right. So over the last couple of years, these are some of the places that I've done full-day trainings on running the Buried Treasures Workshop, just in 2 years. Atlantic City, New Jersey, Wells, Maine, Holland, Mass, Truro, Mass, Falmouth, Mass, Yarmouth, Mass, Northampton, Mass, New Bedford, Mass, New York, New York, Tulsa, Oklahoma, San Francisco, California, Los Angeles, California, Denver, Colorado, Atlanta, Georgia, Brisbane, and Sydney. Now, for every one of those trainings, there are new groups spreading out, right? And people are coming and they're learning how to run these groups. And some of them have a clutter issue, some of them don't, but what they all have in common is they're human. That is the greatest credential. They're compassionate, they're human, and they care about people. They care about the people more than the problem. They want to help. And that's what we're here to inspire, is to bring that out, to say you can leave your clinician's cap at the door. Your greatest credential here is that you're not perfect either. So let's be real. So what I've done is I've taken a look at some of the costs of a full clean-out and property damage versus the cost of a Buried in Treasures workshop. So the associated expenses of a full clean-out, this is for a single clean-out, about $10,000 or more by recent estimates, and they are often repeated more than once. Those costs include the estimate or the consultation fee, recovering the valuables, disposal, trash removal, hazmat, biohazard, pharmacological, management of donated items and items to be sold, cleaning the home, organizing the items, coordinating the maintenance, the plumbing, the extermination, the electrical, the painting, construction, consultation with family, social services, mental health workers, the municipality, the mileage and travel, and the follow-up visits. That's the solution that's being used today, the forced clean-out. $10,000 or more, and rarely just once. Then you've got the associated expenses of a fire in an apartment building. Now, this is a recent apartment fire in Massachusetts. It cost about $300,000 in damage, and in this case, nobody died. So you had damage to the apartment building, water, smoke, and structural. It cost $160,000 and a year to fix the elevator. There were displaced tenants, loss of income for the property owner, disruption to the lives of neighbors, and the destruction of neighbors' personal property. Buried in Treasures Workshop, $16 for a copy of the book. The Facilitator's Guide is free. Many agencies, religious institutions offer a room for free. Sometimes the facilitators charge, and sometimes they even volunteer. Stronger sense of pride, more stable relationships, tenancy, financial stability, a brighter outlook on life, reduced medical expenses, and less intrusion by those housing-related personnel. Now I just want to show you a few pictures of folks that have been in the group. This is Joanne before. This is her writing desk during the work and today. This is Carol's bureau. You might think that doesn't seem like much. It's just a bunch of plastic bottles, but they'd been there 10 years. So she made the goal of clearing that off, and that's how she's keeping it. Star wanted to consolidate all the paperwork in her apartment, not organize it, but put it together, reduce that fire and tripping hazard, put it in boxes, work on it. Robin wanted to declutter his garage so he could park in it, and I wanted to organize my home office. So that's the before. This is the during. You can see the sun coming up and going down. And this is now. So I really get to enjoy the things I have. So that's where I'm at today. Thank you.
Is Lee awesome or what? Living proof right here. All right, so just in terms of time, we're going to bring up two folks from Columbia University. First, both of them will come up. Jordana Zwerling, who is a research coordinator at the Anxiety Disorder Clinic. She works in both the OCD and Related Disorder Research Program and at the Columbia Hoarding Disorder Research Program. And she plans to attend medical school to become a psychiatrist in the future. The two of them have been working with Dr. Carol Rodriguez doing this research study that they're going to talk about right now. Danae Sonnenfeld is a volunteer research assistant at the Anxiety Disorder Clinic at Columbia. She works with OCD and Related Disorder Research Program at the Columbia Hoarding Disorder Research Program. But they're all moving to Stanford University, right? Well, you are. Carolyn yourself, right? Danae will be going back to become a social worker soon at Columbia University. So they're going to talk about recent research findings and the work that they've been doing running these Buried in Treasure classes right now. Come on up.
For the sake of time, we think that it's probably just better because we know we want you guys to be able to ask us questions and do more of a question. Most of the research that we have done at Columbia is joint and work with Shuer, who has trained both of us in running Buried in Treasures groups. So we're going to share a little bit of our experience in running these groups, just so that you can have kind of a personal experience. Neither of us suffer from hoarding disorder, so that is the first thing. We're both BA level. I have a master's, but you do not need a master's to run one of these groups. And I would say personally, the experience that it has given me is one that is very different than most other clinical experiences that I've had. You really get to see the process of growth during Buried in Treasures. Over the span of 20 weeks, you become very close with these individuals, and they look at you for support, they look at you for, just a laugh, and even just as a friend. And a lot of these individuals, when they come in to a group, like Lee had mentioned, some of them have never told anyone about this, what they're suffering with. And so when they come to us, and one of the studies that we have recently done was our individuals were at risk for eviction. And so a lot of them were kind of in this position of being forced to come in to see us. And because of that, it gives a little bit of a, rocky start at first. They don't necessarily, maybe aren't as open to coming. But when they do and they realize, most of us, like anecdotally, have said how much they've loved the group, how much it's given them just in the outside of their world of being able to have a support system, and also that it really does help their situation that they're dealing with.
And I just want to say, just because I just wrapped up leading my group on this past Tuesday, so I just finished all 15 sessions with everybody. And what I can say is just the change from the beginning to the end has just been incredible. In the beginning, none of them wanted to be called hoarders. That was not a word that they wanted to use. It was just they had a problem with stuff. and towards the end, they're totally accepting of being a hoarder and really motivated to get through their clutter. And as like the 15 weeks went on, I would see some of the participants come in and bring some stuff to discard during the session. And so you could definitely see improvement. And the best part of it was that there was this huge peer support. Everybody would clap for one another when they would discard something. So it kind of gave them a sense that they weren't alone in this at all. And they didn't feel intimidated by like me being a facilitator because I'm not an MD. So they felt like it was a safe room that they could come to. So overall, it was just really rewarding.
Yeah, and we could say as a whole for our entire program at Columbia, we're mostly volunteer run, and which basically means that, you know, we put the time in on ourselves and don't get anything really back from it besides from just getting to really help these individuals. And I think that's something that is really different than a lot of other, that kind of shows the difference of what Buried in Treasures is that you don't, like, it doesn't need to be a clinician run, and it doesn't have to cost so much money, and in the end, a lot of these people don't have the ability to go somewhere that all of you guys probably recognize. They don't have the ability to go somewhere to get the help that costs possibly, you know, someone like Lee had mentioned, just for, you know, a clean out and how much it costs, but think about like a personal organizer, how much it costs. And so having BIT and having that able to be disseminated is something that we're, you know, really passionate about as well.
All righty, so we do have a few minutes for questions, and I'm sure there are a few. So, all right, you want to come up to the mic in the back? Come on up, and but we'd love to hear your questions, and we'll try our best to answer them. All right, just.
Maybe see if it's on. Turn on, but it says on.
All right, we can hear you.
I have a question in regards to how we can apply this to individuals living in a place like a shelter or somewhere where sometimes something like this can't work at the moment, especially in a transient population. Because if they're coming overnight and they're bringing their stuff, they can't just do the deep cleaning and just get rid of it there. So how can we translate something like this into the shelter system when they're coming in?
Yeah, I can answer that. I've actually, in the past, I worked with one person. She was 84 and commuting from the shelter to the group. And working on, sort of looking in retrospect, her book collection had been problematic for her. And how could she sort of visualize making this improvement as she got, you know, looked forward to moving into her next place? So she was starting to almost make these changes in her mind before she could put her hands on the actual things. Now, I have someone who's currently in the group, and he's coming from a shelter, and he showed us, he has a bag of stuff that he carries around. He collects it, he picks things up all day. And he said what he's doing is, when he gets back to the shelter, before he brings that bag in, he's making those decisions about each and every item. And he's doing it with the support of someone that works there. So he's practicing for when, instead of walking through the threshold into a shelter, it's his home again, so that the cycle doesn't continue.
So that somebody is there going through that process with that person, and it's not just them making that decision alone, but there's that extra support.
Right, he's feeling supported by the staff there, and he's not feeling ashamed. They're proud of the work he's doing, so are we.
I mean, do you, maybe this is a question for Lee, but you also want to be cautious about what's hoarding and what's not. And obviously a lot of people live on the streets, are collecting things just to survive, you know, so that may not in fact be hoarding. It may be hard to distinguish what it is until they actually have a more permanent place to live. But
Well, in some instances, sometimes clients have collected things and they'll bring like one thing or another, or sometimes the situation can compound, and next thing you know, you're noticing at their living area in the dorm that all of a sudden they have a lot more stuff. So, but I think that, like you said, you need to go with a staff member who is going through the process delicately with them.
I agree, thank you.
I mean, the answer would be to start a group there, right?
Sure.
Hi. I just wondered whether this is still going on up at Columbia, and if so, what the referrals process is, what the process is, and
unfortunately for the moment, wrapping up at Columbia because as Lee had mentioned, as Mike had mentioned, where Dr. Rodriguez is moving to Stanford, California. So because of that, we're in the process of, we're hopeful that the hoarding research program is not going to die at Columbia. We are hopeful that it's going to be taken over by someone, but not immediately. That being said, we work very closely with eviction intervention services in downtown Manhattan, and we refer directly to them, and they will be pretty much taking over our client base that has previously come to us. We also have we have a good amount of referrals that we've collected throughout, the years of being at Columbia, and so we're currently right now, if people are interested in referrals, you can call us still, and we are giving out referrals on every day until July 10th.
But what we really want to have happen is have a lot of you guys start to run these Buried in Treasures classes either on site or maybe at a pros program or a clubhouse or some other place, because one agency is not going to be able to deal with all the people that have clutter problems. We need to kind of create more places and spaces for people to go to feel comfortable, to start talking about this stuff out in the open and not feel ashamed about it, and to get help. And there's just, right now, I don't know too many places that are doing BIT in New York City besides at Columbia. And of course,
how does a clinician become trained in this? Is it just you get the book and you read it and that's it?
I mean, that's partly what you can do. Lee could help you. I could help you. A lot of it is kind of similar to doing like, CUCS does wellness self-management in our supportive housing programs. So it's like that. It's not 40 classes, it's 15. But it does take time to learn. You do have to understand the problem, and it does take time away from doing some case management. But we think it's well worth doing. Right now, there are very few alternatives, and obviously the costs are enormous. And doing deep cleanings is just not the answer. It's usually a big problem. Any comments about that, Lee?
I was also just going to say that in the facilitator guide, there is another group that folks can actually organize and start themselves called the Finder Keeper Workshop. And people coming together, they might have a copy of the book, they might have a copy of the facilitator guide, but it's a less structured, ongoing 1 hour a week support group, drop-in style, that people might do even in their apartment building where they live. Get a few people together. You got 2 people, it's a group of 2, right? So, and it might actually grow from there. So let folks organize themselves as well.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Ms. Addison, and I work with New York City Housing Authority. We have 344 developments in all 5 boroughs, which is over 58,000 apartments. There is hoarding them. We have a legal piece in our units. Our residents is a multiple dwelling. We run hoarding task force, but our complication is the after effects. We can get someone to, when they're willing to clean out their apartment, but it's the mental health piece. Now, your suggestion with the, Mr. Shuer, I enjoyed what you said, and it's good, but I don't know if that's going to work for us.
Right.
Is that the only recommendation that would be for us right now? Because APS, we're APS. We use APS for our stuff as well.
Right. Well, I think that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I think that this is a harm reduction approach. It's a way to slow down that cycle of forced cleanouts and crisis and people losing their homes and everything else with it. I think there are times when the level of health and safety hazards do require a clean out, but can that be done in conjunction with learning like this so that the associated costs are reduced over time and that people become more self-sufficient? With the hoarding task force, I've always kind of felt like it's everybody's problem but nobody's job. And I really feel like at this point, maybe with some of these tools, it becomes everybody's opportunity to help, to organize, and to let these things grow themselves organically.
Yeah, over here.
I want to ask you guys, are you familiar with the Hoarding Buried Alive reality show?
Sure.
And what are your thoughts and feelings on their interventions? Do you feel that those folks are being exploited? Or
I would love to give you, go on YouTube and type in Matt Paxton, Opie and Anthony. Matt Paxton, Opie and Anthony. He will tell you exactly how I feel about him. All right, I can't do it justice like he can. Now, the double-edged sword there is, yes, it brought a lot of attention to the issue, and a lot of people are getting help that hadn't, but how are they feeling about that help? And what does it look like? I think those shows, frankly, make everybody look like an asshole, okay? The person who's like crazy and not accepting the help, the organizer who's coming in and pushing, the therapist who's doing this sort of one-way, intervention, it makes everybody look bad. These are a lot of good people, right? But they're being manipulated. And so what it's done is it's taken a word like hoarding or hoarder, and it's made it a dirty word. I have a hard time even writing it. I often find myself writing Hing instead of hoarding, just because it feels so awkward. And so, yes, the show did bring attention to that, but then what it's also done is it sort of brought up a whole crop of new experts, people whose entire education came from appearing on that show. And when you read their bio, it's like 33, appearances on Hoarders, but not much to back that up. And so I think that, yes, it brought attention to it, but a lot of that attention is negative. But we're taking what we have and we're trying to make it better. Matt Paxton, Opie and Anthony, YouTube. Don't listen to it with kids around. Put your headphones on. It's bad. And I'm sorry on his behalf.
Reality TV, are you saying is not real? Okay.
It's an exaggeration.
Yeah.
Right.
Not when I finish that.
Right. Right.
Is there anything that you might be able to offer me, an agency, a program, or something where he can partner and go to, or I can partner and go to, or they can come and help him? Because while I agree that the water program is sensationalized, there's a lot of it, but one of the things that they consistently talk about is aftercare.
Right.
Some type of therapy to help them with that. And I'm finding that what happens is that you do these major cleanups, you come in and you take away what has become their identity in their apartments or in their homes, and then they're left with an emptiness, and the only thing they know how to regenerate back to is go and get more stuff.
That's right. I mean, so we know that deep cleanings usually make things much worse, and then 3 months later it's even worse than it was before. I mean, I think we have some places that you can, refer people as Project or at Education Alliance, and somebody mentioned EIS, I'm sorry. But, until we actually start to tackle the problem ourselves and create some of these kind of programs, is it going to solve every single person with this issue? No, it won't. But what we're doing right now is very little. And, of course, the aftercare, for many of you in the room, is built into the housing. So you can run these classes, and then you have case managers or coaches that are right there or can go to the person's home. A lot of the people that worked at Columbia, they were just living, in rent-stabilized apartments without any kind of case management or social services attached to the program. We have a bit of more of a luxury that we could do these classes and follow up and keep talking. But when I do these trainings, I say you have to start yesterday, because it's going to take a few months and then a few more months to kind of declutter. But if we do nothing, it's just going to, we're doing nothing, and it's worse.
Yeah, and I'll just add, there are very few of these groups in the world. This book is still being used as a tool for the first time by a lot of people. One of the things I think is really helpful about it is that there's help in there for the family, there's help in there for the provider, so that there are these breakout sections in the book that aren't actually for the person getting the support. So it's about how to structure that aftercare, how to make basically a list of priorities, the list of goals and the hopes, wants, and dreams of that person. So why is it worth keeping it that way, right? Acknowledging that is difficult, but actually saying, here are some tools. So the book can be used by a person on their own. It can be used with a partner and a supporter. I would recommend, you know, the website ocfoundation.org, my website mutual-support.com. There are opportunities out there for more help. There are other groups, but what we really wanted to focus on is just how specifically this one can be tailored to the needs of the individual and the community, the context of the rehab.
Yeah, over here, and then over here.
Your work is very impressive, and I applaud you guys for everything you've been doing. I'm wondering, the study groups, have they included people who have been sort of threatened by eviction notices, or have these been people who've been mostly in sort of the preparation and action phases on their own when they and sort of self-refer? I'm just curious if you've seen differences, because I think we're likely to be dealing with people we identify through room inspections and have responsibilities to take some action.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to take that one because actually the data that we would have showed you, the study that we recently finished was a critical time intervention for a hoarding disorder. And so we took a critical time intervention model and applied it to hoarding disorder. And so the critical time is the crisis of being at risk for eviction. And so in order, an inclusion criteria had to be this risk for eviction. And then part of the first 3 months of the treatment is that they receive this buried in treasures as the group therapy. They were offered 6 different types of treatment in the process, but the one that was most chosen was the buried in treasures. And so in the process, they did this buried in treasures for the first 3 months, and then followed by a case management model being followed up with twice a week for a month, and then it titrated down to ended up being monthly for the last 3 months. And so we're in the process now. We had 14 people that entered the study. We had 11 that completed the study. So it's a pretty good, and when I say completed, they did the 9 months follow-up. So it's a pretty good retention rate for it. And in terms of the results, we really found that buried in treasures it was the same results that we had shared about the previous buried in treasures. So where that comes into play that's a little difficult is that they started off very high on their hoarding severity scale. So they're going to come down the same, about 28%, but don't quote me because I'm not staring at the slides. And that's not necessarily, that's not coming down as much as we would like, but that's still coming down to the point where these people were not evicted. So it bought them extra time. It bought them a lot more. Pretty much the time was a huge thing with the legal system. So we worked a lot with the legal side of it also at Columbia and helping them try to, get those services to be able to do the buried in treasures program, because they're being told that they're being evicted next week. So how can I do this program that's going to take me 3 months? So that is something that we found that has been really helpful, is having that for them to go to the courts and say, well, I'm doing this program, I want help. And so that's what I can say for.
But weren't you saying earlier that it's actually probably maybe more effective when they're not going through an eviction, and if they come on their own free will and to the group?
I mean, 100%. We do, just anecdotally, we do believe that, as Lee had said, that buried in treasures can be a very good support system for after a deep clean out, but also can be more of a preventative for, not getting to the point of eviction. And so we find that we don't necessarily, it's still, more research has to be done at this point to really see if it, with eviction populations, so.
All right, maybe we have time for one more. One more, yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your presentation. My question is in your facilitators guide. Do you have anything that speaks to, I work for New York City Housing Authority, and also my colleague here, and the #1 barrier is
Yeah, I think that when it comes, so the question was about how to connect with a person who you actually might not be able to get into that apartment at all. It's so packed.
They're not opening the door.
Right, they're not opening.
We know a little bit about that.
So, you know, in the facilitator guide, what we're really emphasizing is that relationship and the trust building, and realizing that the hardest place to start that might be in that person's home. So what we've tried to do is, if we're starting to try to interface with someone, meeting outside that apartment, having that conversation. So basically that person can be away from that stuff and just feel like the attention is just on them. So sometimes that environment where you're going to have that conversation is the first place to start. It's really, really hard. Part of that is that motivation. What is it that's going to help open the door, right? So how do you do that? There's a group in San Francisco, the Peer Response Team. The Mental Health Association of San Francisco has developed a peer response team. All folks with clutter issues, all of them have done Buried in Treasures. All of them are strong supporters, and they will go to that apartment and meet with that person and be first contact. Because a lot of times, the person who's coming in and they're either a clinician or they have some power in the relationship, they're not as welcomed as someone else who can say, I know what that's like, and by the way, the services that are being offered, some of that is what helped me too. So I'm totally into helping you.
I mean, somebody said it earlier at a workshop, and I thought it was brilliant, but the relationship is the treatment. And of course, a lot of the answers for that, you know, I mean, Lee is naturally empathic and is just, you know, obviously a peer and can tell his story and obviously relate to people. But for us, you know, clinicians, a lot of the answers, you know, and it's all in here, it's motivational interviewing techniques. So getting trained on that is probably critical for a lot of your staff, because a lot of the answers are in that practice, embedded in it. And obviously, you know, CCS does trainings on that too. You know, just lastly, I will just say, I want to thank you all for coming. You know, obviously Lee is around, we're all around here, sticking around if you have any questions. There is the hoarding survey, if you want to take that. Obviously, you know, we'll be here to answer any other questions you have. Thank you so much for coming and listening to us.